What's going on, folks? It's your boy again, Dr. Sean Thomas, back in the building. Episode 85 of the Be More Today show. We are back in the building. And folks, our last episode for 2021 is here. This is our season finale. We've done 85 episodes this year, and we have done so many great things. Again, 49 countries. Be More Today show is big, it's growing, it's everywhere. And we thank you all for your support from the beginning to the time that we are right now in season 2 of this show. We've been doing great things for this movement. Again, Be More Today is on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram. You can join us on our Facebook group. We're talking about health and fitness all the time, wellness tips every single week. And our Strava group is on and popping as always. So if you are a runner, a biker, a swimmer, whatever you are, join our group on Strava, be a part of the movement. And of course, our website, BeMoreToday.com, has my book, which is on Amazon, and our podcast information, and all things Be More Today related. Our swag store is open with some great stuff for the winter season. So get out there and subscribe to us on YouTube as well for our workouts, and for all things Be More Today related. Continue to follow us as we go into the next year, 2022. So this has been a great journey for us, and as always, we do something in New Year's, January 1st of this year. We're doing something called BMT Project 40. I did a lot of research this year on various things related to 40. Of course, my book is a 40-day challenge, but studies have shown that people who do any kind of walking or any kind of activity for at least 40 minutes, 40 minutes, can reduce so many things when it comes to incidence of cancer and other health-related issues. So we decided that this year we do something different, not just a 5K challenge, but a 40-day challenge, 40 minutes of exercise or any activity for 40 days. Starting January 1st. So if you are a runner, jogger, walker, biker, swimmer, whatever you are, CrossFit, right? You have 40 days to do 40 different activities for 40 days. And we're guaranteeing or assuring that that should make you feel better physically, mentally, emotionally, at all levels. So if you do want to join us for that, please visit our site, Be More Today, and you'll find information about the BMT Project 40 starting January 1st. My quote for today is simple as always. The last one for this year. While you don't control the outcome, you do control the effort. This has been a year where we've seen a lot of people be in situations that they didn't think they're going to be in, right? Whether it was sickness, whether it was being laid off from jobs, whether there were issues that were happening in the community, whatever the case may be, they were in situations where things were not exactly how they thought they were going to be. But in all those things, you can't control the effort. Right? You can control how much effort you put into changing your situation, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a work-related issue, a school-related issue. Our effort can dictate our outcome. So as we go into this next year, I implore you to go out there and just be a little more, put a little more effort into what you're trying to do. Don't just focus on what the outcomes may or may not be, because you can't control those things. But if you really put some effort into what you're doing, whether it's trying to change your community, whether it's trying to go out there and start your book, or to finish your book, or to get through grad school, or to pay off some of those loans, or just to be healthier in general, right? Watching your meal prep and your food preparation, your exercise and your fitness stuff, drinking more water, getting more sleep, all those things you actually can control, but you got to put a little more effort into it. And if you're already seeing that you haven't gotten to a place because you have put in some effort, but it hasn't been enough, you got to ante up. You got to be a little more, as we always talk about. So that's my charge for you going into this next season. And as we start our challenge for January, I hope you will join us for that. And my guest on the show for today, folks, is a man who is a game changer. He is the epitome of putting in that work, to putting in that effort, and showing and seeing outcomes in his own life and also in his community. And his name is Mitchell Silver. Now, when Mayor de Blasio named Mitchell as NYC's Parks Commissioner, he calls him a visionary. The mayor went on to say he has a passion for fairness and equality. He understands that we have to ensure that parks and open spaces are available in every community and are well maintained in every neighborhood in this city. At New York City Parks, Mitchell streamlined the capital process by 6 months, allowing the public to enjoy renovated parks sooner. He introduced a new public realm strategy called Parks Without Borders, launched a capital project tracking system, and initiated a framework for an equitable future to improve the park system that included a $318 million campaign to transform 67 of the city's most neglected parks. The $50 million Parks Without Borders program earned national and international recognition for its innovative approach to urban design and helped make parks safer and more accessible. Both the Community Parks Initiative and the Parks Without Borders is being replicated in the United States and abroad. Folks, he is not just a man who does so many things for the community, but he's also a fitness buff and just completed his 4th marathon. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, please welcome to the stage my final guest for 2021, Mitchell Silver. Mr. Silver, what is going on?
Well, first, thank you for that very, very warm introduction. I'm sure we'll get into in our conversation, but I'm just so excited to be here. As Parks Commissioner, I used to tell people we're not just a Department of Parks and Recreation, but a Department of Fun, Health, and Happiness. And so while I'm not Commissioner anymore, I moved on since my term ended, but I continue that work, even though I'm not head of that department. I advocate fun, health, and happiness as much as I can through social media, through writing, through speaking. So I've now entered the next chapter of my career, but I'm feeling good. Thanksgiving is upon us, holiday season. So I'm feeling good and I'm excited. And I feel healthy. That's what's important. I feel very, very healthy.
That's incredible and amazing. And congrats on your tenure. You've done so much for our city and we appreciate you. And, you know, I do follow you on social media. And so you just completed your 4th marathon. Congrats on finishing the 50th anniversary of the NYC Marathon. How do you feel now that the race is all over?
I feel amazing. So you may not know, I also ran Chicago in October. It was not a great race, but New York, the 50th marathon, was the best marathon experience I've ever had. It was hot in Chicago. I did not have a race strategy, struggled, hit a wall, cramped up. But then I reached out to my partner, my running partner, April Cargill. We go back to college, we're running partners. So I reached out to her coach, Coach Kai, analyzed my running, came up with a race strategy. Never had a race strategy before. So I have to thank Coach Kai. Came up with the perfect system, went out there. It was a nice, easy, relaxed run. April and I ran with 2 first-time marathoners. So they said, we're going to stick with the veterans, and got through it. The crowds were amazing. The weather was perfect. And his strategy, which I don't know, won't get into the detail, but to go slow, conserve her energy. And when I was done, you know, I'm approaching 5th Avenue and I'm like, I got all this energy. Flew up 5th Avenue, finished on a fast pace. Crowds were amazing. Saw friends out there, a lot of people screaming, Commissioner, come back. You know, but it was saw family, saw friends, saw my running crew mates. It was an amazing experience. And so I was glad I could be there for the 50th, and no wall, no cramps, no pain. It was amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah, I've run an NYC a couple of times and people have always said, you got to go all slow because 4th Avenue is going to kill you. And for years, I just messed up, did the same thing, just cruising, hit a wall every single time. So that strategy that they told you is the right one to do. So well done on that. Well done on that. And yeah, I know you run 4 marathons. I know you did Chicago this year, but congrats on that. Who'd you run with in terms of a team this year? Do you have a team that you ran with?
Yeah, I ran with Harlem Run. I mean, when I was commissioner, I went out to all the crews to make sure that I just show them some love. I don't want to name one because they're going to feel bad if I leave someone out, but I run with Harlem Run, even though I'm from Brooklyn. Really fell in love with Harlem Run. I've been running with them now since 2017. So that was represented on my shirt. So that is my run crew. But like I said, I reach out to all the running crews. My favorite run of the year, Willpower has the last 10. All the crews come out. I flew up to New York for that because I wasn't going to miss it. So I call it a homecoming because you get to see all the different running crews. So much love, crew love, and then we run the last 10 and have a great time at the finish line in Central Park. So it's Harlem Run, and I even run it down here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they're like, I actually run a lot of different crew shirts, but Harlem Run is my crew.
That's great. Yeah, shout out to Harlem Run. I missed the final 10 because my running crew, Spartan Sundays, ran that on the next day, the Sunday. And but I usually run with teamwork every now and then as well. So I know they were out there in droves.
Well, the 2 people that we ran with, the new folks who were with teamwork. So Thomas Moore was one of them. I think the other guy's name was Antonelli. So those were the 2 new folks we ran with in the marathon. And, you know, they struggled a bit at 18, but it was nice. We had 2 Harlem Run, 2 teamwork, and the crowds were just screaming out the name.
Yeah.
Teamwork. They didn't even know the crew, and they had the line down.
Yeah, it's exciting. And NYC, especially for this year, was just so amazing coming out of COVID-19 and people just being inspired and excited to cheer for people in New York City. I mean, like you said, the energy was electric. And I really think we needed that, especially during this time in our history, in our world, in our country. And when I look at you, it's just amazing to see that a lot of people do things in terms of their jobs that don't always correlate to what they're doing in their actual personal lives. But you're someone who really practices what they preach. Your practice for talking about fitness and giving access to parks has been not just shown in terms of your community, but you've provided spaces for them, but for you as well to go out there and be active in your life and your career. Have you always been an active person when it comes to exercise and fitness?
I have. I mean, it's been off and on. I started running track in the seventh grade, ran in high school, ran in college. And then after college, I would say it was kind of hit or miss. The real turning point was in 2008. My brother tragically passed away, and I struggled to get over his death. He was a year older than me. He was 49 at the time. And after going to therapy, they wanted to give me medication, and I said no. And then I realized that he was a runner, I was a runner. And so I started running, and it really connected me with his spirit. And that got me back into running. It was the only thing that eased depression, because when I ran, all the memories of us running together, since he was older and bigger than me, and my goal was to beat him because I was very competitive, it kept me going. Then I stopped, and then I came back to New York, and because I was commissioner, had drivers, I just wasn't eating properly, I wasn't exercising. I went to my doctor, and he said, "Can I be honest with you?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "I'm concerned about you. Everything I'm seeing, I just ran all the tests that you may not be around here in a couple of years if you don't change your lifestyle today." And so to me, that was a wake-up call. And I started walking, then running. And I realized, wait a minute, I'm back in New York. My brother and I ran Prospect Park. We ran Brooklyn streets, and I started picking up running again. And eventually, my best friend April connected me with Harlem Run, and that's kind of the story. So the answer is yes. I mean, generally, I've been fit most of my life, but the last, since 2016, it's gone through the roof. It's nutrition. It's not just physical health. It's making sure self-care, mental health. And now I'm addicted. I just turned 61. And still cannot believe I can run a marathon effortlessly, the word I'm trying to use. And for me, it's just a blessing. And now to share that with others. When I ran my first marathon, my staff and I came up with a hashtag, I run the parks. They wanted to document my running journey back in 2018 to show even at the age of 58, you can do this. And so I documented that journey and exposed people to the amazing parks in New York City, where you can run, where you can walk, the places people didn't know about, the nutrition, the commitment to get up early, but then a community of the running community to show how connected they are and how they support you and they're by your side. So the answer is yes, I've been relatively active in my life, most of my life, but the last 5 years have really gone to another level.
Incredible. My mom ran her second marathon this year with us. She's in the same age bracket as you are. And, it's funny because she always was someone who was like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. But once you actually do that thing, you recognize that, I can do this. And when you see people who are in your same age bracket doing that thing, you recognize, wow, if he's doing that, or if she's doing that, then I can do that too. So I know you've probably inspired many, many, many people with the documentary they had on you and with just your lifestyle and your training out there, putting yourself out there and showcasing that age is just a number. There are no limits to what you really can do. And a lot of it is a mindset. When you change that mindset and go out there, then you really accomplish anything. And you have clearly done that. And I'm sure you've inspired others to do the same.
I do want to underscore, particularly for COVID, because I was still out there running maybe once a week or twice a week just to make sure my mental health was in good shape. But I do want to let people know our parks are not just for physical health, but they're for mental health. And during COVID, these really became our sanctuaries of sanity. And I really want to encourage people. I know it was scary out there, but go for a walk. Study after study will tell you just being in green space for 10 minutes reduces stress and anxiety. And that was a tough time, compounded with the civil and social unrest. So I really encourage people that, in New York City, it's our front yard, it's our backyard, it's where you connect. But now parks are becoming part of our healthcare system. And that became more apparent during COVID. So yes, I want to encourage people, lead by example, to let them know, just go out for a walk at lunch if you can find a green space, and it will actually help your mental health.
Yeah. It's funny during COVID-19, when things were locked down, I was still working. I didn't have a chance to actually be off. But when I did come home, my daughter, because school was shut down, went to the parks. And just being in the park, because she wasn't in school, she wasn't going anywhere. Just being in the park for her was like going to Disney World. It was just like an eye opener to recognizing that, okay, I'm out of these four walls of this house. I can actually be in spaces and play for a little bit, distance from other kids as well, which is very, very safe. But just that became a safe haven for us, literally for months on end. That was our go-to. All right, we're going to the park. Let's go to the park. Let's go to the park. And we appreciated when the parks opened, because some of them were closed for a while. But when they did open back up, it was like a breath of fresh air that literally just made our lives so much easier. And even there were even times when we drove around the city, going to various parks, not just the parks in our area. We live in Bed-Stuy, but the parks that were downtown Brooklyn and even in the city, just to kind of get a different perspective. Going down to downtown, down to the piers, and just being out there and recognizing that yes, we have so many beautiful things to look at and be a part of in New York City. Even though things are shut down or were shut down for a time, that became a safe haven for many of us, especially those who had children. For kids who couldn't go anywhere, literally it became a lifesaver. So we were very, very appreciative and continue to be appreciative for all the work that you've done and that the city continues to do to keep our communities together.
Yeah, and kudos to the Parks Department because, they were terrified. They were deemed essential workers, had to come to work from the very beginning. And they were concerned because there was a lot of unknowns about COVID-19. I'm so happy that we had this global campaign to light up the Empire State Building and Washington Square Arch and other New York City icons green to thank the Parks Department for really keeping our spaces open. And so many New Yorkers like you told us how much they appreciated it. And we know that because it was their outdoor office, their gym, their wedding venue, their birthday party venue. I mean, you saw how crowded they were. And people were really saying, I need this for my mental health as well as physical health. So I'm so grateful for the Parks Department, all of them, for making sure our parks stayed open during a very, very difficult time.
Absolutely. Now, you receive a lot of high praise from a lot of officials, and you were featured in various magazines, multiple shows for the work you've done with New York City. De Blasio called you a visionary. How did you get involved in this work at all? And what drives you to see it or to have seen it to go to its fruition?
Well, believe it or not, I was inspired in 1964. My parents took me to the New York's the World's Fair in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and I saw this model, a life-size, not life-size model, but a model of New York City. It was called a panorama. I didn't know at the time. I could not get that image out of my head, and I knew it stayed with me that I wanted to involve somehow with cities. And so, make a long story short, grew up right next to Prospect Park. That's where I was exposed to nature. And so, as time went on, I pursued architecture, my undergraduate degree, and then urban planning. I was fascinated about cities, but also fascinated about the people who live in cities. So that's where my passion initially came from. But then growing up in Brooklyn and then traveling, not every city looked like the Brooklyn I grew up in. And I wanted to be in a profession that helped change place for people for the better. And so throughout my career, I've been driven to really protect the public interest, to look at their public health, safety, and welfare, to improve their environment, whether in planning or parks. I was very fascinated by improving the built environment because I knew just based on your zip code, you may not have a healthy lifestyle because you don't have the resources and the services. And I just felt that wasn't fair. And so I was, doing a great job here in North Carolina, grew up in Brooklyn. I was head of planning and development. And then New York City called me back. And when I met with the mayor to say that the mission was really to address equity and safety, I just said I had to come back home. And so I continue to be driven because to me, when you're appointed, you have a timeline. And so the mayor got reelected. So I had a little over 7 years. And I didn't want to waste any of that time because I was on a mission to make sure every community had a quality public space. And so after the 7 years, we completed over 850 capital projects. Many of those were in underserved communities. And I continue to be driven even now as a consultant.
That's incredible. And I read in your bio about two initiatives that you were doing, the Parks Without Borders and Community Parks Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about what those two initiatives are?
So living in New York City, you kind of take the fences and the barriers for granted. When I came back, I just noticed what is up with all these fences and gates and walls. And I wanted to make sure people had more access to public spaces. And so to me, access became important, not just access, but also in terms of the rules and how we allow people to feel welcome in our public spaces. And so the Parks Without Borders is to really create a more seamless public realm. You have the sidewalk, I call the sidewalk the outer park. You have the street, to me, that's a public space that we give far too much of it to cars. And so Parks Without Borders was this way of creating a seamless public realm, of blurring those boundaries between park, sidewalk, and street, and start to break in some of those parks, make them more accessible, have new openings, take down or lower the fence. So this became an effort to really make the park safer. When you lower the fence and create more openings, you actually make the park safer. So on Flatbush Avenue, this was a dream of mine when I was a child, running with my brother around the perimeter of Prospect Park. We put 2 new openings on Flatbush Avenue. That's the result of Parks Without Borders. Seward Park in Lower Manhattan, we lowered the fence and opened up this plaza where a library is located to make it more accessible and welcoming. We lowered fences, 100 parks throughout New York City as we were doing a capital project. Now you can see in the space. And for women and seniors to be able to see around you gives you that sense of safety. And even NYPD appreciate the fact that they can better surveil parks by just driving by because there's fewer fences, there were lower fences, and lowering the fence made the parks more safe, which is counterintuitive. So the Parks Without Borders was really the effort to create a seamless public realm. Anytime we do a project, we redo the sidewalk as well. You go out to Traverse Park in Queens, we took down this 15-foot fence. We brought the park out to the sidewalk. Now there are benches on the sidewalk because parks close. Sean, sidewalks never close. So now we can bring that experience out to the sidewalk. So it has been a very, very successful program. Community Parks Initiative. This one makes me very emotional. We did this analysis and found out that New York City spent $6 billion over 20 years improving parks. Now that's multiple mayors. We wanted to find out in that 20-year time frame, how many parks saw little to no investment. 20 years. It turned out there were 215 parks hiding in plain sight with no champion to say, hey, come fix my space. I felt that wasn't fair. To me, equity means fairness. It wasn't fair that certain communities in New York City, over 20 years, that's kindergarten to college, saw no change in their public space. So we were determined to change it. I approached the mayor, and to his credit, he gave me over $300 million to transform 67 of the 215 parks. We've completed 62. I keep saying we, because I'm still, I guess, a New York City Parks alumni. The stories will move you. 2 quick examples. Well, I remember I was in Staten Island. This was Stapleton Playground. We renamed it Maggie Howard Playground. And this Black man looked like a football player, about 6'5", strong, heavy. He came to me and he said, we have a visioning session where we go out to the community and ask for input. And he said to me, what are you doing here? And I says, we're here to have a visioning session to get your input. He looked and says, no, what are you doing here? He said, I lived here all my life and I thought nobody cared. What are you doing here? And that really struck me because it let me know that this was real to some people. He said he could not take his children there. He didn't feel safe. He wasn't proud of the way that space looked. And I knew that this is why I was doing the work that I do, to make sure that these families have places to connect and get healthy. There's another example I share very often. This was in Brooklyn, and this was your typical asphalt playground. You know what I'm talking about. Nothing but stripes on crack asphalt. And we converted it, synthetic turf, track, new play equipment, plants, seating, beautiful. And this little boy, Hispanic, this was opening day, refused to come into that public space, wouldn't go in. And it's like, this is opening day. This is like party time. One of my staff members went up to him and asked him, why won't you come into the park? He said he didn't know how much it cost. It looked that nice, he thought he had to pay to go into that park. Now, I know for sure that that boy and every child in that neighborhood, their lives are going to change to know they have a world-class quality park to play in. That's the impact of public space. That is the impact investing in communities that have been neglected for generations. We talk about trauma and anxiety from the last 2 years of COVID. What about generational trauma? Generation after generation, dealing with the isolation and the pain of poverty and being underserved. These parks represent an opportunity to heal, to connect, and to get healthy. And so am I driven? Absolutely, for all those reasons. And so, like I said, we completed 62. We did 850 in total. And I know that lives will change. They'll get healthier. They'll feel better in terms of self-care. They will connect, and they will feel a sense of fairness that I got a nice park too. I don't have to travel 3 or 4 stops on the subway to go to a quality public space.
That's powerful in so many ways. You know, there's so many times when, even in some areas in Brooklyn and some of the other urban areas, you know, many families don't go to parks for fear of shootings, for fear of just safety. And we've been in that situation as well. There have been some parks we say, you know what, we can't go to that park because we heard last week this went down, that went down. We saw that this happened on the news in the area. So the fact that you're able to change those environments for the long haul, and clearly this little boy who had the experience seeing this thing and even asking if it was free or not, or how much it cost, that to me is mind-boggling. But it lets you know, like you said, the disparities that people have to go through, the inequalities when it comes to our access to these things, and how something as small as just making a park better, just changing how it looks, changing its accessibility, changing the safety of it, those small things, although they do cost money clearly, but in the lives of this kid and that father and that community can just change the entire spectrum and trajectory of how someone maybe gets involved in more fitness or gets involved in doing more things in their lives.
Yeah, in the past, people would design parks to be quote unquote vandal-proof. And to me, I
Right.
never those designs. To me, if you respect the community with quality material, they'll respect you back in return. All the parks we renovated, we're seeing no vandalism. We're not seeing any vandalism. So this notion that if you have to make it vandal-proof is the best way to protect it or put high fences, to me sends a wrong message. I don't want to imprison kids in a play space just to have some fun. Let's take our municipal pools. You know, we did an initiative called Cool Pools. And what we did was we went into these pools, many were located next to NYCHA, public housing, and we revamped them. We painted them, we made them vibrant, put out umbrellas and lounge chairs, and now people call it the resort. Giving people dignified public spaces just because they're in underserved communities doesn't mean we have to provide underserved parks. And so it's just offering dignity. And like I said, we now have community members that are now helping to care for these spaces because they're really enjoying and taking ownership of saying thank you. Thank you for respecting us, and we're going to respect you back in return. The era of vandal-proof parks to me is over, at least in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're so right. Just like you said, opening up the areas, making them more accessible. We have a number of females who run our Spartan Sunday Running Club, and you know, we run in Prospect Park sometimes, and we've met early sometimes, and a lot of them say, you know, I don't feel. This is before you guys did the renovations over there a couple of years ago. So we don't really feel safe in the park because it's so dark, and you know, and as a man, you know, I think about those things, but not really. You know, I'm running all over the place. My mom's always like, why are you running so much? And it's so early. Go when it's lighter out. But you know, I'm kind of fearless, and then maybe that's to my detriment. But I'm kind of fearless when I run in the morning, not thinking about all these other things that can happen. And it is different for children and for other people as well. But just opening up these parks, making these things safer, it has just changed, not just in terms of young people, but in terms of how everyone can really just feel safer in their environment and doing more things and being more active. So we appreciate you and all the work that you've done, not just for NYC, but continuing now back home as you're doing down there as well. It's a game changer for a lot of us. It's a game
Well,
changer.
thank you.
I do have a question now. You know, a couple of months ago, September, October, and this is not in an impoverished area. I mean, Union Square Park is one of the higher well-class areas in New York City, but there were a couple of statues that were up, which we appreciated. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, John Lewis, and they were featured in Union Square Park. And within the first 48 hours, it was reported that someone had defaced the George Floyd statue. A number of people were outraged about this, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this as someone who has been or was so involved in the NYC Parks Department. What are your thoughts on how that went down, or at least what happened in Union Square?
Well, I have to say across the board, right after Black Lives Matter, we saw a lot of defacing citywide in our monuments and our parks throughout the city. There are certain people that are struggling with a demographic change in this country. And unfortunately, we had a president that ripped a scab, an ugly scab that made hate hooligan. And so there are some people that want to poke and provoke. And so this was an issue of a person struggling with the changing demographics of America, the concern that they're losing control and power. And so they're expressing themselves in the worst form of way. They wanted a reaction. They wanted to poke and provoke. And so to me, the movement of where we're going is ultimately going to prevail. So this is just a distraction that could be easily rectified. It is sad, but I encourage people to stay strong and don't get distracted by people who want to provoke you or poke you. To me, we have to be a lot stronger than that. I believe people of color are extremely resilient after all the trauma I mentioned earlier, generational trauma we had to go through. So this is only a blip in the screen. There was an exhibit. It was a powerful exhibit. And I would not let someone rob your joy by their small-minded poking, provoking, and distraction. The bottom line is there was an exhibit, and many of them felt joy and reflection from going there to observe the statue, one of the national hero, John Lewis, and then others who were tragically killed in a year of extreme disturbance.
Yeah, and you couldn't have said it better than that. I think it's disturbing to some extent, but like you said, we as people of color are so resilient, and it's amazing that, like you said, you renovated all these parks, and there's been no vandalism, right? In areas that are deemed as impoverished and whatever, there's been no issues. And then in this situation where things probably should not have gone awry, there had been, and I'm sure it wasn't someone in our demographic. I'm sure it was someone that was, like you said, exhibiting their hatred or their response to what's happening in our society. But it's like these times, like you said, that we should just be even more vigilant to make sure that we're doing the right thing and showcasing love as we have over the number of years where we've been persecuted and pressed and pushed. And I think even more about, I know you're an urban planner and you've been on the forefront of so many things regarding racial equality, the infrastructure in the 21st century. And this Rittenhouse trial has been so controversial in various ways, right? There have been a number of protests that have been happening around various cities. And I'm so curious in terms of your thoughts about, how important racial equality is for us as people of color moving now into this new infrastructure, looking at societies changing and getting better. When things like this happen, you're doing so many things to build the communities up, but then every now and then something like this tends to seep in, and it makes it seem like, well, what's the point? Or how can we be better? Or a number of people responded to Rittenhouse saying, not surprised. How do you see, I guess, moving forward, since you are a visionary and you've seen so many communities be transformed? What are your thoughts moving into the next couple of years as we continue to build up our communities, how we can continue to push forward, even in perilous times like these?
I mean, this is a tough one. I have a general saying that you have two options when tough times come, and that's to be bitter or better. This is one of those moments. It was difficult to watch. I still cannot get out of my mind that he brought a gun to a protest, a gun. So, in my mind, what was your motive? I understand in that state you have rights, but why would you bring a loaded weapon to a protest? That to me is the first point that I'm struggling with. I'll leave the whole issue about gun rights to the side, but to me, there seems to be two sets of justice in our country, and this was yet another example for Americans to see. Unfortunately, because of our divisive politics, depending on what tribe you're on, you'll have a different perspective. So this is yet just one example of our judicial system, how it handles certain Americans and how others don't receive the same level of justice. But again, I keep want my eye to be on the prize. And as I said, you have a choice of being bitter or better. Being bitter starts to eat you up and cause you to do very destructive things to both yourself and to others. But to be better allows you to find a way of finding a better path forward. It is hard, but throughout my career, when that fork in the road came, when that judgment time came to be bitter or better, I always chose to be better. And as a result, it benefited me personally and it benefited me around. And I learned from these tough lessons. This one's hard to process, but America, again, just witnessed the two judicial systems we have running in this country. If you're a certain color, you get a benefit of the doubt. If you're another color, you don't. And to me, I find that extremely troubling. But I'm still very disturbed that this young man brought a loaded weapon to the protest. And you'll hear some say rioters. No, they were protesters. There's a difference between the two of rioters and protesters. And to bring a loaded weapon to me, that was very disturbing. I didn't follow the entire trial, but I found that to me of severe concern. What was the motive? What was the intent of bringing a loaded weapon? If you want to stay protected, stay home so that you're not in a situation where something bad can happen with a loaded assault rifle.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And my wife's a defense attorney, so she's somewhat torn on this because that's basically what her entire world is in terms of defending. And she's always talking to me about making sure that the defense does what they're supposed to do, right? And it didn't seem like they that everything that was out there should have been done the way it should have been done. There were definitely ways that they could have defended and even prosecuted differently in this case. And the legal system is what it is. If you can't prove it a certain way, you can't, without reasonable doubt, prove that this is the way it is, then we have these results. And I think that the way that we move forward, like you said, is to be better or better. And we've seen that we can and have been better as a people for many, many years. And I think that what you're doing, sir, not just in terms of a global scheme, because you've done so many things to inspire communities just to be better, but recognizing that, when we have blips in a system like this, that we can push forward. And even though this may have happened in Wisconsin, what you're doing here, what you've done here in New York, and we'll continue to do it in Carolina, is something that will be as impactful as that moment has been, because you're changing lives for the legacy of families, for the legacy of communities, for the legacy of people. And I'm just really impressed by you. And that's basically what I hope Be More Today mantra is. It's really showcasing ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And even in the time of trials and tribulations or challenges, there are people who do great things and showcase great things for the community and for others and for themselves. So as the 85th person on this show, I've had 85 people on this show explain or share what Be More Today or that phrase means to them. You're the last person for season number 2, number 85. When you hear the phrase Be More Today, what does that phrase mean to you?
To be more and not to be less. All of us have amazing potential, and you have no idea what you can accomplish and do. All of us in our head, I'll never forget, someone once shared with me, every object you see in your house, in your place of work, never existed until someone thought it could be possible. A cup, a speaker, a computer, a phone. Those did not exist. And to be more is really pushing yourself to know what is possible. It may be a simple idea, it could be a big outcome. I want to be more and not less. I'm grateful for every day God has given me. I don't want to take it for granted. It's another opportunity for me to do something, because it will come a day when I will be gone, my legacy will live on, but I want to make sure I take every day as a blessing and do as much as I can to help others while I walk on the face of this planet. Now, even though I'm based in North Carolina, my practice is now global. I plan to share what I do, not just here, but in New York, overseas. I plan to go to Australia and Africa next year to continue to do more and to be more. So for me, it's not to be less, it's to be more and use every day to the fullest that God allows you to breathe fresh air.
Well said, sir. Well said. Well said. You kind of already expounded upon what's next for you, but anything else that you want to share about goals you have for 2022, or where you're moving forward with your mission?
Well, now that I'm a consultant, I'm very grateful for the firm I'm working for, McAdams. I'm an ambassador for the company. I do a lot of public speaking on parks, on public space, on diversity, equity, inclusion. But I also help projects. In my bio, it said that is my focus, that I know upfront. If you're going to hire me, we're going to have a conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion. And by the way, I always tell someone it's not, diversity, equity, inclusion is not what you do, it's who you are. So to me, that has to be part of your essence. Otherwise, it comes off as unauthentic. But I'll also be writing. I'll be working on some projects. I want to make sure I get everything signed before I announce what I'll be doing. I'll be teaching, assisting teaching at Harvard, starting in the spring. And so I'm just going to be out there doing great work in planning, parks, public space with a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion. So for me, that's what the next chapter is. And so I'm in New York on a regular basis, hope to do some work there as well, and just continue to spread my knowledge and mentor young people so that they can learn how to do what I've done in my career.
Very, very exciting. Very, very exciting. Awesome. I'm super excited. And I think that the best way to end this season is with you. I mean, you've inspired us to go out there and just be more. And I appreciate your time and all your energy and your efforts. And I wish you the best with all your plans and projects for next year and moving forward. Where can people follow you on social media or otherwise?
Well, Instagram, it's Mitchell_Silver. Same tag on a handle on Twitter. So it's Mitchell_Silver. I'm primarily on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook, I may touch once a year. LinkedIn, so. So I say Instagram is probably number one. And then Twitter, I also use as well. And awesome. Then, so Sean, you and I mean, Brooklyn, we got to go for a run next time I come up there.
I was just gonna ask you, are you still running, and are you doing anything running-wise for next year?
Well, I just signed up for the New York half, so training starts January, and I put in for London and Berlin. Let's see if I get into get picked in the lottery. So that's the plan for 2022. I'm taking a break from New York. I love that one, but I want to cheer for folks, both Chicago and New York. But let's see if I can get into London and Berlin for 2022.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm taking a break from New York too. I did sign up for lottery for Chicago and for London, and we will be also in the half. So I'll definitely see you for the half. And if you're ever in New York, you give me a little link and we'll meet up and do a little run one of the parks. That'd be fantastic.
Absolutely.
That'd be fantastic. Mr. Silver, thank you so much for being on this show. I appreciate you. You made episode 85 and the last one for the season, one for the books. I wish you all the best for the holiday season. And thank you again.
Same to you and your family.
And folks, don't forget the quote from today. While you don't control the outcome, you do control the effort. Mr. Silver said it best. Don't be bitter, be better. We can be better. We can change our trajectory. We can make things so much better on our own. You put a little more effort into certain things. And you see what he's done, not just in New York, but now globally, changing little things in parks. right? Making more things accessible for others. It can change the trajectory of someone's life. The little efforts you make in any realm can change the bigger efforts in the future. And like you said, nothing existed before it existed. If you want to get something done, think about it. Put it out there. Put in the work. Put in the effort. Don't be afraid to go out there and try new stuff. And let's continue to be more together for this year into next year, 2022. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. As always, you can follow me on Be More Today, BeMoreToday.com for my book. Our swag store is open, the podcast everywhere in all 49 countries. And if you want to send me any thoughts or get in contact with Mr. Silva directly, email me at drshawn@BeMoreToday.com or send me a message on any of our social media platforms. As I always say, have a good day, have a good night, have a great life, and continue to take your steps to greatness to be the best version of you. I will see you next year.